Tonight, we are waiting for new information after a deadly midair collision over the Potomac took the lives of 67 people aboard American Airlines Flight 5342 and a military helicopter. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Simone D'Alba.
And I'm Larry Miller. Federal investigators are now reviewing 2 flight recorders, those so-called black boxes, to try and figure out what caused that deadly crash right outside of Reagan National Airport.
We're also learning more about the victims who tragically lost their lives, including a number of people who lived right here in the DMV.
Right now, we're waiting for a news conference to get underway by the NTSB to update us on where their investigation stands at this hour. Once that news conference gets underway, we'll be sure to bring it to you. Right now, the Federal Aviation Administration has shut down the low-altitude helicopter corridor that was in use at the time of the collision. Crews are still working to recover the remains of 26 people. Authorities confirmed in the last 2 hours, dive teams are working in targeted areas. The U.S. Army has identified 2 of the 3 soldiers killed in the collision.
They include 28-year-old Staff Sergeant Ryan O'Hara and 39-year-old Chief Warrant Officer 2 Andrew Eves. The Army says Eves' remains have not yet been recovered.
The Army said that at the request of the family, the name of the 3rd soldier will not be released at this time. Our Matthew Torres has been staying on top of the latest from officials on the scene.
Matthew, give us an idea here. What are you hearing from DC Fire?
Well, first off, Simone, the NTSB was supposed to have that press conference at the top of the hour, but they decided to push it back for another hour as they gather more information. But just about an hour ago, DC's fire chief confirming that 41 of the 67 victims have been found. They know that they have been able to positively identify nearly 30 of them. But as of this morning, authorities were only able to officially notify 18 families that their loved ones have been found. Chief John Donnelly saying it likely will take having to remove the fuselage of this plane from the Potomac River to recover all of the victims. Salvage crews have already arrived on scene. They're assessing today and hopefully can start removing the fuselage and helicopter no later than tomorrow afternoon. The chief described having sonar scanning, airline and shoreline searches, and dive teams in specific areas. Now, a lot of the focus today has also been on that military helicopter. It's also been raining today, but the chief says the weather has not posed a big problem.
In my view, it may slow it down slightly, but all of the units out here, all of the people work year-round in all conditions. We're going to be careful. We're going to make sure we don't hurt anybody else, but the weather we've seen so far is weather we can work in.
Meanwhile, the airport will continue to have 2 of the 3 runways closed, meaning there are still flight cancellations. Now, these runways are closed to the crash site and must stay that way for recovery efforts. They could be closed for about a week, but airport officials say they will reassess on Monday. And the vice president of Reagan National Airport was also here today, dodging a fairly good amount of questions about his thoughts on concerns over the crowded airspace. Instead, he directed a lot of those questions to the FAA. Also, to note, the chief also said that if anyone finds any debris along the shoreline, make sure do not touch it. Just call 911 instead, guys.
All right, a lot of good information. We look forward to getting more at the top of the hour once we hear from the NTSB. Matthew Torres, thank you so much.
New tonight, despite today's weather conditions, recovery crews, as you just heard, still hard at work looking for victims and debris from Wednesday's accident.
Our Lionel Donovan is live from Gravely Point in Arlington. Lionel, you've been following this recovery effort very closely. How is it looking right now?
That's right, Larry. Well, as you can imagine, access to the Potomac River at and around the crash site is severely limited right now. Agencies are giving themselves a wide berth to work, but we're going to try and give you an idea of what's happening on the river right now. As you can see off into the distance, you can see boats and barges in the water still going through, trying to find as much of the debris as they can. However, I'm told that the weather is making things more difficult. Meanwhile, some private citizens, with permission of authorities, are trying to help as well. One of those is Dean Noyax. He's an experienced waterman and a member of the Potomac Riverkeeper Network. Noyax joined the network in 2015, and when he heard about the devastating plane collision, he started to prepare to help. Given his experience navigating the Potomac, he says he knew that there would be certain areas of the river that may not be explored.
It was eerie. You know, you go out there and quite frankly, you're hoping you don't see some of the things are in the river. And I was just there to help, but I was prepared mentally, and I just started doing a transect of that area that I know probably hadn't been covered yet, and just started finding all sorts of debris and wreckage and just pulling it in the boat as fast as I could. And everything was covered in jet fuel. It stunk of jet fuel. My face actually got red just from being around jet fuel. So it's definitely was pretty intense day to get out there. But again, nothing compared to what these families of the victims are going through.
Nonieliaks went on to say that with the weather changing, he doesn't have any plans to go back onto the water this weekend. However, as for anyone else who might want to come out to help, I cannot emphasize this enough. Make sure to check in with law enforcement first. But for now, we're live at Reagan National Airport. Lionel Donovan, WUSA 9.
You think of the larger environmental impact that's going to come from all that's been in the river as well. Thank you, Lionel. Right now, we are continuing to hear from President Donald Trump as he weighs in on what he believes caused the midair collision over the Potomac.
We told you yesterday that the president, without evidence, blamed the crash on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as former Democratic presidents Joe Biden and Barack Obama. Trump even signed a presidential memorandum pinning the blame on, quote, illegal decisions during the Obama and Biden administrations.
When asked about it in the Oval Office, the president admitted that he doesn't know for sure.
Mr. President, to be clear, are you saying race or gender played a role in this tragedy?
It may have. I don't know. Incompetence might have played a role. We'll let you know that. But we want the most competent people. We don't care what race they are. We want the most competent people, especially in those positions. And you're talking about extremely complex things. And if they don't have a great brain, a great power of the brain, they're not going to be very good at what they do, and bad things will happen.
The president also signed an executive order appointing Chris Rushlow as acting head of the Federal Aviation Administration, a position that was vacant since Trump came into power after pushing out the previous head.
This comes after the president replaced the heads of the TSA, the Coast Guard, and gutted the Aviation Security Advisory Committee. We're also taking a look at Trump's claims of the FAA hiring people with disabilities and potentially that being a factor in the deadly crash.
And it says FAA says people with severe disabilities are most underrepresented segment of the workforce, and they want them in, and they want them, they can be air traffic controllers. I don't think so.
But that statement from the president is misleading. The FAA under President Trump's first term used similar language when encouraging the hiring of people with disabilities. However, back then, during the Biden administration, that does not mean that they were hired as air traffic controllers.
The FAA had emphasized back in 2019 and 2020 that people with disabilities would not be hired for jobs that they aren't capable of, saying they are put through a rigorous training and only those with the aptitude, medical, and security qualifications can be considered.
Well, during times of tragedy, our community comes together to support those doing some of the toughest work.
Yeah, we know that. That's exactly what DC Central Kitchen is doing. It has provided warm meals to the first responders who are working on this recovery mission on the Potomac. The nonprofit group, which really focuses on combating hunger and providing job training, has set up food trucks in the area of the crash site.
More than 300 rescue crews have responded to the air disaster since late Wednesday night, and DC Central Kitchen says that it plans on continuing their support as long as they are needed.
And when we work together, we can respond to really difficult situations like this. We can also build a better, stronger, more inclusive community. And so knowing that our staff and our culinary students, many of whom have battled things like unemployment, homelessness, addiction, or incarceration, are coming together right now and stepping up for our first responders who are being heroes in this moment. It means a lot to us, and it's a reminder of what Washington, D.C. and our greater community can do when we stand together.
If you would like to help by volunteering or making a donation for the effort, we do have information on our website, WUSA9.com.
Well, we've heard from a lot of you asking the question, how can you help? Well, if you want to make an impact, text the word HELP to the number on your screen, 202-895-5599. We'll text you back with the link on ways to show your support for the families touched by this disaster and first responders working in these tough conditions to bring them home in peace.
We also know this tragedy is really taking a toll on many of us, both emotionally and mentally. We've put together a list of resources to help you work through the grief. You can find those right now on our website, WUSA9.com, or on our mobile app.